Hello everyone! Welcome to another Always Flying video. This video is going to be the start of a series that I will be calling AAA, or All About Aviation. This series will talk about some of the long-gone airlines and airplanes that really fascinate me. Today's video is on TWA. Many of you haven't flown on TWA because TWA is such an old airline. TWA was formed with the forced merger of Transcontinental Air Transport, TAT, and Western Air Express to form Transcontinental and Western Air, or TWA. The companies merged at the urging of Postmaster General Walter Folger Brown, which was looking for bigger airlines to give small airmail contracts. The airline was now part of the Big Three, or Big Four: American, United, Eastern, and TWA. The airline operated a fleet of Fokkers and Ford trimotors. In 1934, following charges of favoritism in the contracts, the airmail scandal erupted, leading to the Airmail Act of 1934, which made the military operate all the airmail routes. This really hurt the business in the airline industry, as most of the money all came from airmail. However, this was a disaster, as the U.S. Army operated at exponentially high cost to the government, and later the U.S. decided to give airmail routes back, however with the clause that no former airlines could operate the route. So TWA changed their name to TWA Inc., thus qualifying it as a different company, and it got 60% of the old contracts back. TWA needed an aircraft to fly over the Rocky Mountains. They preferred a trimotor like the Fords, however, they needed a newer aircraft that could seat more people and could fly at higher speeds and at higher altitudes. Bill Boeing and Lockheed did not give any aircraft, so they contacted the little manufacturer of Douglas, and Douglas built the experimental DC-1 aircraft. Many improvements were made, and the DC-2 was born. After the 32 deliveries of the DC-2, TWA took deliveries of DC-3 aircraft. In 1938, General Motors began buying stock, so Jack Fry, the airline president at the time, approached his aviation enthusiast friend, Howard Hughes, to buy some stock. Howard Hughes eventually bought 78% of the TWA stock in World War II. World War II allowed the airline to prosper, racking up 40 million miles of flights for the Army, as well as supplying the North Atlantic route and the South Atlantic routes. Airplanes operated at 100% capacity and operated nearly 24/7. Many pilots were also hired, and thus, after the war, there were a lot of aircraft, which allowed TWA to expand rapidly internationally. However, there was a rapid international expansion, which led to higher than expected costs for the airline. The pilots thought that the airline was doing well, so they wanted higher pay, thus initiating a holiday season strike, costing TWA about $8 million, while TWA was still doing bad financially but expanding really well internationally. Many of its routes were still unprofitable, and thus the president, Jack Fry, resigned in February of 1947, followed 3 months later by another executive. Now, Hughes and his financial advisor, Noah Dietrich, were running the company basically by themselves. Most of the board was from Hughes' other company, and they had a power struggle. because there weren't any very good presidents for the airline, and most presidents wouldn't work for the airline because Hughes controlled everything. Hughes thus made many mistakes. One time he took a Lockheed Constellation to Nassau, flew it around himself for 3 months. His co-pilot thought that he was surveying for some land for a new home for himself, but that is not known. Thus, a lawsuit brought Hughes into court for this. Hughes eventually didn't appear in court, so TWA won. In 1950, the airline officially changed its name to Trans World Airlines.
Up and away. Wouldn't you like to fly up and away?
If you'll take our hand, we'll chase your dream across the sky. For we can fly.
TWA suffered its late entry into the jet age as Hughes was more preoccupied in buying more Lockheed Constellations, while Pan Am was preoccupied with getting Boeing 707s. Eventually, though, TWA did get new jet aircraft at Hughes' expense. Hughes was in $125 million in debt, so the banks didn't allow him to get any more aircraft because he already had $315 million in pre-orders for aircraft and $90 million in pre-orders for engines, along with another $85 million in pre-orders for Convair and another 40 Electras, which were never delivered. Hughes had a voting trust initiated by the banks because the banks did not want him controlling the airline. Thus, a new president, Charles Tillinghast Jr., came into power. Under this new administration, TWA made large profits of $12 million and then $20 million and more. Rapid expansion was still happening, and they had an all-jet fleet by 1967 and had Boeing 747s, Lockheed TriStars, Boeing 727s, which they nearly operated 100 of them at the time, and Boeing 707s. Facing the pressures of deregulation, the airline consolidated its route system around a hub in St. Louis and an international gateway in New York. It was still able to remain profitable during this time because of its route, hub, and spoke system. Let's now take a look at the 1976 TWA commercial on the Lockheed TriStar.
This is TWA's wide-body 1011. It's built for comfort. Its seats are extra wide with special thick cushioning.
And now TWA serves you a delicious steak and coach on all 1011 meal flights to the east.
It's got quiet Rolls-Royce engines and the most advanced flight control system in commercial aviation, so its flights are incredibly smooth.
TWA's wide-body 1011 to the east. It's built for comfort.
TWA's end came in 1985 when a man called Carl Icahn bought the airline operations from Transworld Corporation, which also owned Hilton Hotels and other entities, and appointed himself as chairman of the newly independent. This led to a lack of capital, which meant that he had to sell assets to get money to expand. He sold the London Heathrow routes and also sold other profitable routes in order to get money. He also created a deal where TWA would sell flights at 45% off to his own entity, and the entity would sell at a higher cost, thus giving himself money. In the 1990s, TWA went into 2 bankruptcies to kick this man out. However, when he was ousted, he still got a lot of money, and he remained unscathed. TWA at this time was in a bad shape. In 1998, after the 1995 bankruptcy, TWA began a huge turnaround. They ordered 125 brand new aircraft, and the fleet renewal program included adding newer and smaller, more fuel-efficient, long-range aircraft such as the Boeing 757 and the 767. At this time, some of the 727, 747s, as well as the Lockheed 1011 from the 1970s were retired.
All from the airline, adding one new plane every 10 days this year. More new planes?
In 2001, TWA faced some financial issues once again. An American offered to purchase TWA for $745 million. Ultimately, what made TWA go bankrupt was the Carl Icahn Caribou deal, which gave TWA no power over their own pricing, as the entity that he controlled the pricing. American promised TWA workers jobs, and in April of 2001, the merger was officially completed. The last flight was flew in December 1st, 2001 with an MD-80 aircraft. Nobody could actually predict the aftermath of the September 11 attacks, so there was actually no need now for the secondary St. Louis hub. The New York hub was deemed useless because American Airlines already had a New York hub, and all flights were transferred to the American Airlines terminal. All former TWA flight attendants have been laid off. Today, if you go to St. Louis, the former TWA St. Louis terminal sits mostly empty. Southwest is the main employer at St. Louis now. JetBlue has taken over the old terminal that TWA used in New York. After the acquisition from American Airlines, TWA fell back into the history books. For me, it's pretty sad because some people spent so much effort and money opening a world-class airline and expanding it. It's also pretty sad because without TWA, there's a lot less competition, which therefore raises fares and brings worse service. So I hope you guys like this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you can like, comment, and subscribe for more, and then I'll see you in the next video. I just want to leave you guys with this little clip of this advertisement. So, bye.
Taking that extra step to make flying the best it can be. That's what makes TWA one tough act to follow.